Hello folks, it's the Picc-Vic again. Welcome to another one of my videos. In this one I'm going to have a look at the Pic-Vic project, the scheme to link the north and south parts of the railway network in Manchester together that was proposed in the early 1970s. There is a longer video on this on YouTube by Rory McVeigh, so check that one out if you want to know the full story. In this one we're going to have just a brief overlook at what was proposed, why it didn't happen and what was actually built as a result of it, because there's a general sort of feeling that nothing came of it. But it's not quite the case. There were some projects that were actually constructed off the back of this proposal. So recently I did a video about the trial light rail line that was built in East Manchester at Debdale Park in 1987, and I mentioned there that the Victorian rail builders left a bit of a problem in Manchester, in that the railways of the north and the south of the city weren't really connected to each other. That's because they were built by different companies. In some cases these companies didn't get on, there was open hostility, but more often than not it was just because they all did their own thing. They didn't really think about talking to each other and constructing joint stations and things like that. They were all just doing their own thing, aiming to attract their own business, and so they just built their own stations. The cuts of the Beeching era and sort of before and after left Manchester with two main stations, Piccadilly at the south of the city centre and Victoria at the north of the city centre, and as I said, the railway networks to each weren't really connected together. There were some awkward sort of connecting routes around the outskirts of Manchester, but nothing that was really usable for a decent service. Now in 1965 a transport study started in Manchester to try and see how public transport could be improved. In 1969, a passenger transport executive, or PTE for short, was set up to oversee transport in the Manchester area, the Selneck PTE. Selneck stood for South East Lancashire, North East Cheshire. And in 1974 that PTE was renamed to Greater Manchester PTE, at which time its area was extended to include places like Wigan. So they took over the transport study, and in 1973 they published what was known as the long-term plan, the cornerstone of which was the Pic-Vic project, or Pic-Vic tunnel as it was known. As the latter name suggests, it was a tunnel linking the railways of Piccadilly and Victoria together. So here's a map of what was proposed. The line would have left the existing lines at Ardwick Junction just south of Piccadilly. At Ardwick Junction the lines are on a viaduct raised into the air, so it would have descended down to ground level and then gone below into a tunnel. The first station would have been Piccadilly low level, which would have been linked to the main Piccadilly station. They would also build a new bus station next to this one. That was the proposal to link in with it as well. The line then swung off to the west to call at what was known generally as Whitworth Station. It was also sometimes called Princess Street. The names of the stations tended to change quite frequently during the course of the plan. So that would have been on the site of Whitworth House, and it would have served the colleges and the university area. The line then turned round to call at Central Station, which was also variously known as Albert Square or St Peter's Square. As the latter name suggests, that would have been in St Peter's Square. There were going to be 6 entrances from the square itself. There was going to be a concourse underneath Albert Square. I think another entrance from Albert Square as well. They were also going to put a bus lay-by in St Peter's Square, not a full bus station, just a lay-by where several routes could stop and connect with the new station. And it was then going to go around to Royal Exchange Station, which is also sometimes known as Market Street. That would have been at the junction of Corporation Street, Cross Street and Market Street. Obviously all these are under the ground, so they wouldn't have been on the surface, they were under the ground, and that would have served the Arndale Centre. And then the line went along to Victoria, where it would have called it a low-level station at Victoria. Again, that would have been linked into the main Victoria station, and again there was a proposal to build a bus station there next to it. And then the line would have gone alongside the Bury route, so that kind of went off the main line up to Miles Platting. It was on the right hand side as you headed out of Victoria, and it tunnelled underneath to go through to Queen's Road. Just before Queen's Road station, the Pic-Vic line would have met the Bury line and then carried on from Queen's Road station up to Bury. So we started this video looking at a picture from some publicity that I've got in my collection. This is a map from the same publicity. You can see the stations marked on here. The idea was when they left Victoria they would have gone up the Bury line, and then they were going to reopen the line from Radcliffe to Bolton as well, so you could have gone to Bolton or to Bury in the north. Phase 2 extensions was going to be to Rochdale as well, they were going to go up there. And then in the south of the city it was going to go along to Hazel Grove, and then link into the lines towards Macclesfield, the Style line. Remember the airport branch wasn't there, that was opened in 1993. So yeah, the Style line down to Wilmslow, and also the line through Stockport towards Crewe. As part of the proposal, the line to Hazel Grove will be electrified at 25,000 volts AC, and the Bury line will be converted from 1,200 volts DC third rail to 25,000 volts AC overhead. So when the scheme was proposed first in 1973, there was some confidence that they might get the funding for it. Funding had just been awarded to Liverpool to build the Merseyrail system, the tunnel underneath the centre of Liverpool, connecting the Wirral lines to the northern lines. And also funding had been given to Tyne and Wear to build the metro system, to convert heavy rail lines to metro operation, and also to build a tunnel section underneath Newcastle city centre and Gateshead town centre. So there was some confidence they might get the money from the government that they needed to build the Pic-Vic project. Unfortunately, that confidence was misplaced. It was a bit of a raw deal for Manchester. Tyneside had just got £49.1 million allocated for its metro system, and Liverpool had got £16.2 million for the Merseyrail. But Manchester didn't get anything, unfortunately. In 1974, the cost of the Pic-Vic project was estimated at just over £114 million, of which just over £55 million would have been the tunnel section under the city centre. So it was quite an expensive project, and because of that the government hesitated about funding it and then eventually said that they wouldn't. Unfortunately then, in October 1974, the construction of the Tyne and Wear Metro started, and it became obvious that the cost of it was going to be more than had been estimated. As a result of that, the cost of the Pic-Vic scheme was revised as well. And by 1977 the estimate for it had gone up to £160 million. So in 1977 it was announced that it was going to be shelved, they couldn't get the funding for it and it wasn't going to go ahead. Now I know what some of you are probably thinking, why did they go for that circuitous route round the city centre rather than just going straight from Piccadilly to Victoria? Well, the answer to that was that there was a thing called the Guardian telephone exchange underneath Manchester city centre. It was top secret. It was one of 3 bunkers in the UK. The others were in Birmingham and London that were designed to enable communications if there was a nuclear attack. So there were underground secret bunkers filled with telephone equipment. As well as domestic lines, they also had a direct line through to across the Atlantic through to the United States of America, to the President in Washington, in the White House. Now, obviously, this was a secret bunker at the time. Its existence has only more recently become known after it was declassified, decommissioned, and the information can now be released to say that it was there. It's still there apparently. It's in use just for normal telephone lines nowadays. But obviously they couldn't declare that it was there at the time because it was top secret. Some of the planners of the Pic-Vic scheme would have been aware of it, hence why they had to set this route. They would have had to sign the Official Secrets Act, so they didn't reveal the existence of it. So they probably had critics going, why don't you just go straight across the city centre, it'll be cheaper. And they couldn't tell them why they couldn't, basically. They had to go around this bunker, as I say, the Guardian telephone exchange. So yeah, in 1977 the Pic-Vic project was scrapped. However, some bits did get done. As I said, there's a general feeling that nothing happened with it, but it's not quite the case. For a start, new bus interchanges were built at Bury and at Altrincham. They would have been part of the scheme, so they were constructed. And also in the early 80s, the line between Stockport and Hazel Grove was electrified at 25,000 volts AC. So that took place off the back of this. That was part of this scheme, and that actually did take place. Something that was constructed as well was this void underneath the Arndale Centre. This is from a newspaper article that I've printed out. When the Arndale was constructed, this void was put in underneath it. So that was where the Royal Exchange or Market Street station would have been. They actually left room for it. So British Rail did leave a class, a TOPS class as it was called, an identifier for a type of train, available for the ones that were supposed to run on the Pic-Vic scheme. They're going to be class 316. The picture we've been looking at from the publicity in my collection is an artist's impression of what the train would have looked like. In reality, it would look more like that. That's a class 314. There were class 313s, 314s and 315s built to the same basic design, along with the class 507s and 508s on Merseyside that were third rail powered. The 313s, 314s, 315s were powered by the overhead wire. So the 316 would have looked pretty much like that, almost in the same livery. This is one in Glasgow in Strathclyde PTE livery. The Manchester ones would have been probably orange and brown. And this is a photo taken by myself at Glasgow Central Station in 2001. The lines around Manchester did need modernising. This is a photo from 1992, just after the Metrolink tram opened, showing Manchester Victoria Station. You can see, just peeping into the right of the picture, is a class 142 pacer. They'd been introduced in the mid-1980s to try and modernise some of the stock. But some of the older trains were still in use. In front of it is a class 108 unit, dating from the 1950s. And this is a shot of the east end of Manchester Victoria Station with the signal box there. The Bury line would have been off to the right of this. It's not in the shot, unfortunately, former lines to Bury, which by the date this was taken again in 1992 was the Metrolink tram. And then the Pic-Vic line would have been under the ground at this point, but it would have come out. Basically, if you go to the left of the locomotive and just carry on going, it would have come out over there somewhere at the proposed Queen's Road junction. So in 1992, Manchester did get its modern transport system in the form of the Metrolink tram, which connected Piccadilly and Victoria on the surface as well as other parts of the city centre. This is a commercial postcard of one just coming up from Victoria by the look of it. So as always, thank you for joining me. It's much appreciated. Hope you've enjoyed the video. As I say, please check out Rory McVeigh's video. He goes into it in far more detail than I've just done. As I say, it was a brief overview that I've done. And also, please check out the one I mentioned on my channel about the trial light rail line at Debdale Park. But again, thank you for joining me. Take care. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.